From South Carolina Public Radio, this is Who, What, When, an hour of history, games, and trivia. I'm Daniel Thompson.
And I'm Brandon Gray, and this week we're turning back the clock and discussing the early days of the United States with an episode all about those founding fathers.
Coming up later this hour, we'll see if you can tell actual historical quotes from the lyrics of Hamilton, hear 3 stories about Benjamin Franklin that may be too wild to actually be true. We'll also speak with a Clemson University historian about the early days of our country.
It's going to be a good one, Dan. If you want to join us for these games, just call or text us, 803-470-6347. Again, that's 803-470-6347. Or you can send us an email to whowhatwhen@scpublicradio.org. You will have a chance to take home the title of the Who What When Champion of the Week and potentially the trophy, the Who What When Fanny Pack.
The real deal. Brandon, who do you think the founding fathers were?
All right, give me a second. So there's my dad. He founded me.
Gross.
I'm a dad.
Yes.
I have founded a company.
Also gross.
Well, so me and my dad, number one answer.
Yeah, that's shockingly incorrect, but that's okay. It was a bit of a trick question.
Really?
Yeah, really. What's interesting about the founding fathers is that there is no consensus on who is included in that group.
So you're saying I could have been me, could have been my dad.
There were, nope.
Okay.
There were many people that weren't men behind the scenes working fervently to help found our country. Some people think that the founding fathers are just the first 5 presidents of the country. Some people think it's anyone that signed the Declaration of Independence. Others think it's more of a grab bag of a bunch of different folks, but there isn't an official list anywhere of who these founding fathers are or who fought for independence and established our nation proper.
So I don't want to keep bringing up my dad, but what you're saying is it could have been my dad.
Is your dad 300 years old?
I don't know. My dad's always been old.
So you think your dad could be 300 years old?
My dad could be 300 years old.
Yeah. Before we spend any more time on this, can we bring in our contestants?
I'd love that. We got 2 listeners on the line right now, and I'm getting word that neither are my dad. Caller number 1, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey guys, I'm Chad. I'm from the Wilmington, North Carolina area. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Wilmington, North Carolina. I detected it in his accent.
You can hear it. You can
hear the Southern in his accent.
Yeah, absolutely. Chad, you got a favorite founding father?
Well, Brand, I like that you said it was your own father you were thinking might have been one of those. But I'm a big fan of John Adams, actually. I like his quote that says, "Truth is a stubborn fact," or something like that. I paraphrased incorrectly. Or, facts are stubborn things. That's what it is. Yeah, and I love that quote because it's irrefutable.
It's irrefutable. Facts are stubborn things. A great quote. That's good. I like Chad's chances.
I think Chad is pretty good.
He had a John Adams quote in the chamber.
Yeah, he had it ready to go. He got it wrong the first
Samuel
time.
Adams right now.
Yeah, so he's drinking a Sam Adams Saturday morning. What better? Maybe it's a Sam Summer.
No judgment here, brother.
No kidding. All right, let's meet who he's playing against. Caller number 2. What's your name? Where are you from?
My name's Corey. I'm from Florence, South Carolina.
Corey from Florence, South Carolina.
That?
So we're getting a little coastal here, close to it here.
That's
Florence.
Right. Battle of the Carolinas
That's
going on
exactly
today.
right. Corey, your favorite founding father?
I think I like Brandon's father, too.
Thank you, Corey.
A lot of votes for Lee Gray this week.
Shout out to my dad.
Shout out.
A lot of votes for Lee
Love
Gray.
that guy. I get it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. Do you have a founding father quote ready to go, Corey?
No, I don't have one locked in the chamber. I wasn't ready for this.
Yeah. Well, you
totally
can use
fair.
my favorite quote from my dad, which is, "Get off!" He would always say that.
Go on, get.
Yeah, he would always say that to me.
All right, we're ready to play our first game?
I think so.
We're going to start this episode with some general founding fathers trivia in a game we're calling You Are the Father.
No better way to kick off the episode than with a nice little Maury Povich joke. It's fun.
Is it? Chad's up first. Chad, here's your question. Only one president in our nation's history did not go to college. He's also the only president to be elected unanimously into office. Is that A, George Washington, B, John Adams, or C, Thomas Jefferson?
Excellent questions. And I know the educational history of the other 2, so I'm going to go with A, George Washington.
He's going to go with A, George Washington. He is correct.
Yeah, and I will just say, Chad, you don't have to suck up, buddy.
Yeah,
You're already
come on.
on the show. This whole
He
wow, what a
knows
great
the
question.
educational background.
I don't have a fanny pack, guys. And
Yes.
I used to watch you growing up every day. I was sick at home. I'd watch you right after The Price is Right. So this is a full circle moment for me. I'm all excited. Wow.
Really big.
Those old Who What When episodes from the 80s
Really
were
good.
really when they're on TV were great.
Big bucks,
really
no
good
whammy.
stuff. All right, he's on the board. Corey, the next question is yours. Here we go. The youngest signer of the Declaration of Independence was 26 at the time and from right here in South Carolina. 22 years later, he became the governor of the Palmetto State. Is that A, John Calhoun, B, Edward Rutledge, or C, BBUG?
I'm going to go with Rutledge.
He's going to go with Rutledge. So strong, so confident, so correct. Eddie Rutt.
That was a strong Rutledge call out by Corey.
Edward
Wow.
Rutledge is correct.
I think we got ourselves a game. Just judging by the way these two answered their first question, this is going to be a fun one.
Didn't bite on BBUG there.
No, shout out BB.
Shout out.
Yeah. Did you know Uger was pronounced UG? We go over this
No,
from time to time.
no.
UG.
I may
BBUG.
have given it a try with BB Hugger.
That's right. Yes, Edward Rutledge is correct. Corey, it's tied 1-1. Chad, back to you here on You Are the Father, right on What When, South Carolina Public Radio. Here's your question. The phrase founding fathers wasn't really used regularly until almost 150 years after the Revolutionary War, when this president ran on the idea of returning to normalcy in 1920, calling back heroes of yesteryear to boost the rose-colored nostalgia of voters. Is that A, Warren G. Harding, B, Franklin D. Roosevelt, or C, John F. Kennedy?
That would be the famous rapper Warren G. Harding.
Regulators, he's correct. Warren G. Harding. Chad
Love
from
his
Wilmington.
album.
Chad, what's your favorite Warren G album?
The Roaring Twenties one that he does. It's spoken word. It's
spoken word.
beautiful.
It's
And I like his early acoustic stuff too.
Yeah, wow.
All right, Chad, it's a fine answer, but Regulators with Nate Dogg is unimpeachable. It's a classic, okay? All right, Chad, you're on the board there. You were on the board. You're more on the board now. Corey,
You couldn't be more on the
your
board.
second question here on You Are the Father. Alexander Hamilton's career was undone thanks to a publicized affair he had with a married woman, Maria Reynolds. In court, Reynolds was actually represented by this founding father lawyer. And let's just say it wouldn't be the last time he'd be connected to Hamilton. Is that A, Ben Franklin, B, John Adams, or C, Aaron Burr?
I'm going to go with Aaron Burr.
He's going to go with Aaron Burr, and he is correct.
This is a fight right now.
These guys know their history. Haymakers.
They're not even having to talk it out because they know it. That's
All
how
right,
we
Chad,
do it.
back to you. I don't think this question has any hip hop in it, so you might be at a loss, but we'll see what happens. Your next question here, Who What When, South Carolina Public Radio. This founding father never signed the U.S. Constitution. While many think it's because it didn't favor his home state of Virginia and represented too much government control, the truth is he just happened to be in France during the Constitutional Convention. Is that A, George Washington, B, James Madison, or C, Thomas Jefferson?
Well, I do know Madison, Washington, and Jefferson are all Virginians. However, Jefferson spent a lot of time in France. So I am going to go with Thomas Jefferson for my answer there.
It's like Chad was made for the Founding Fathers episode.
Wow.
Chad is correct. Thomas Jefferson.
And it brings up a great point for those of you that call in to be contestants on the show. We just kind of pick at random.
That's right.
We don't match you up with something that you're good at. So
You could have easily gotten the weather episode.
Yes,
You could have
you
gotten
could
the
have.
summer episode. You could have gotten Roaring
but
Twenties.
today, Chad and Corey have Founding Fathers.
That's
So
right.
we're better for it.
And you know what?
Because they're crushing it.
Brand, I don't want to sound the perfect game horn too early. We did it. We got to get that horn fixed.
Yeah,
it is.
It does sound a
It's
little
getting out of hand.
sticky.
It's
yeah.
getting out of hand. That's right. Corey, to keep the perfect game alive, your next question here on You Are the Father. Maybe he didn't realize that 56 people were going to sign the Declaration of Independence. Maybe he didn't care. Regardless, this founding father's name is synonymous with his signature, as it took up 6 square inches of parchment compared to the roughly 1.5 square inches of most every other signature. Is that A, John Hancock, B, Samuel Adams, C, John Adams?
Well, I'm confident about this one. It's John Hancock.
It's John Hancock. Florence holds strong. We're in a real battle here, Bran.
I love
Yeah.
The idea of someone going up and signing something, knowing that other people are going to do it, and just being like, I got this.
I got this.
I got this. I'm going to leave my mark.
Yeah.
I love that about
That's right.
him.
Yeah. People literally to this day.
Yeah,
Name me one other thing about John Hancock.
I can't. I can't.
I'm sure Chad could, but I'm not going to ask him. Your next question here, Chad, on You Are the Father. Here we go, Chad. The second president of the United States was also the first vice president. And after serving as ambassador to England, as well as the key author of founding documents, he called the vice presidency the most insignificant office that ever the invention of man contrived.
Oh, man.
Is that A, John Adams, B, Thomas Jefferson, or C, James Madison?
I was hoping you would say D, Herbie Hancock, one of the other founding fathers, not as well known, but I'm going to go with John Adams.
John Adams is correct. Herbie Hancock was actually a Volkswagen Beetle. He went up. He went up to sign. He went beep beep. That's what he did. They signed the thing. That's what happened.
Man.
Chad is correct. John Adams, the first vice president, hated the job, thought it was stupid.
Is it cool if I leave here and go watch my favorite Lindsay Lohan movie?
Herbie Fully Loaded?
That's exactly right.
I mean, it's always cool if you do that, Brand. I don't know why you asked permission this week. It's weird. It's weird.
I do. If anybody ever hears me not talk for a couple of minutes, it's because I've gone in the other room to watch some Herbie for a little.
Brand, a big fan of the Lohana songs, for sure.
Yeah.
That's
Let's
right.
go.
All right, Corey, to keep the perfect game intact, your next question about our founding fathers. This president and founding father chose not to run for re-election, instead going home to open a whiskey distillery in the late 1700s, which quickly became the largest whiskey distillery in the United States of America. Is that A, George Washington, B, James Madison, C, James Monroe?
Oh, I'm not really sure. I'm going to take a stab. James Madison sounds like a whiskey drinker.
I bet they were all whiskey drinkers. James Madison is incorrect.
Oh.
Incorrect. The key there was late 1700s. There was only one president who was done with his job in the late 1700s, and that was our first, George Washington, who had quite the legal whiskey distillery right on his home premises in Mount Vernon.
There you go.
True story.
How about that?
That's right. All right, Cor. You did miss the first one. All is not lost. There's plenty of game to be played. Chad, your last question here in our first round, all about founding father trivia. It starts right now. While this founding father was said to be quite shy and reserved, his wife Dolly was the opposite of that, throwing lavish parties for members of Congress, pushing social agendas during her husband's presidency, and actually saving a portrait of George Washington during the burning of the White House in the War of 1812. Is that Thomas Jefferson, Samuel Adams, or James Madison?
Dolly was married to James Addison, fellas. James Madison, not Addison.
James Addison, little known president, big Warren G fan. We're looking for James Madison. That is correct, Chad.
that?
A perfect round from Chad.
Yeah.
All right, Cor. Pressure's on. You need this one to stay within striking distance here. Not out of the woods yet. Here we go, Cor. This era of good feelings president ran virtually unopposed in 1820, was considered the most handsome of our founding fathers, and is the only president not named George Washington to have another country's capital named after him. A, James Monroe. B, John Quincy Adams. C, Andrew Jackson.
I wish I'd studied a little harder for this one. Andrew Jackson.
Andrew Jackson is incorrect. The capital of Liberia, Monrovia. We're looking for James Monroe.
This is Who I Win. I'm Brandon Gray here with my buddy Daniel Thompson. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode all about founding fathers and the early days of these here United States.
Our contestants, Chad from North Carolina and Corey from South Carolina, are going head-to-head this week. Coming up after the break, we'll see how well they do with a game pitting actual quotes from history against lines from Broadway's Hamilton.
That's next here on Who What When.
Welcome back to Who, What, When, an hour of history, games, and trivia from South Carolina Public Radio. I'm Daniel Thompson here with my good buddy Brandon Gray. We're playing games about the Founding Fathers this week.
Oh, we're having fun. Before we get back to our games, a quick reminder that you, yes, you, Janet, can be a contestant on a future episode of Who, What, When. Just call or text 803-470-6347 or send us an email to whowhatwhen@stpublicradio.org.
And before you call, Janet, we still have our contestants Corey from Florence, South Carolina, and Chad from Wilmington, North Carolina on the line from our first round. Chad's in the lead, but Corey has a chance to come back in our very next game.
And it's a game that we're calling History or Hamilton because I'm not throwing away my shot.
You were so proud of that for no reason.
I'm pretty proud.
Here's how this game's going to work, Corey and Chad. We're going to see how well you can tell actual speeches from our Founding Fathers apart from lyrics from the Broadway hit musical Hamilton. Brandon is going to do a dramatic reading of the quote, and you'll have to tell us if it's history or if it's Hamilton. Are we ready for our first one here?
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
Chad.
sounds fun adjacent.
Fun adjacent. Fair enough, Chad.
That's what we go for here, buddy.
All right, Brandon, whenever you're ready, your first question here on History or Hamilton.
Why stand we here idle? What is it that gentlemen wish? What would they have? Is life so dear or peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery? Forbid it, Almighty God.
Hamilton. I'm sorry, it's history, not Hamilton. History.
Which one are you going with, Chad? History?
History. It's my final answer.
History is correct. Chad, do you have any, for no bonus points at all, do you have any idea what that speech is?
Oh, yes, I know the speech in its entirety. I don't want to take up too much time, but no,
Okay.
I don't know.
The next line of that speech is, give me liberty or give me death, Patrick Henry.
There you go.
That's what we're going with. All right, Core, we're playing history or Hamilton. You got to get on the board here. Big time. It's crunch time. Right now is it. Bran, whenever you're ready.
I'm the model of a modern major general, the venerated Virginian veteran whose men are all lining up to put up on a pedestal, writing letters to relatives, embellishing my elegance and eloquence.
Core, what do you think? History or Hamilton?
You know, I don't have a lot of exposure to Hamilton besides the Weird Al Yankovic cover.
Yep.
But that sounded kind of rhymey. I'm going to go with Hamilton.
Sounded kind of rhymey. He's going with Hamilton. He's correct.
The alliteration alone.
That's from Right Hand Man. That's Chris Jackson playing George Washington there. All right, he's on the board. Chad, you got to guess if this next quote is history or Hamilton. Whenever you're ready, Bran.
France is following us to revolution. There is no more status quo. But the sun comes up and the world still spins. Now the work at home begins.
Chad, what do you think?
I am going to go with Hamilton on that one.
It's going to go with Hamilton. He's correct again. That is David Diggs as Jefferson in What Did I Miss? That's what that is.
There you go.
All right, you guys are rolling.
Rolling.
We're talking Founding Fathers here on Who, What, When, South Carolina Public Radio. Corey, your next history or Hamilton question starts right now.
The very idea of the power and the rights of the people to establish government presupposes the duty of every individual to obey the established government.
Core, what are you thinking? History or Hamilton?
Well, we did a couple Hamiltons in a row. I'm going to guess history.
He's going to go with history. It's gameplay. It's strategy. Would he do 3 in a row? Corey's betting not, and he's correct.
How about that?
That's history. That's from George Washington's farewell address.
There you go.
Very famous speech in United States history. We're playing history or Hamilton here on South Carolina Public Radio. We got Chad from Wilmington. We got Corey from Florence. And Chad is going to guess whether this next quote is from history or the Broadway musical Hamilton. Bran, take it away.
I will not agree with gentlemen who trifle with the weaknesses of our country and suppose that they are enumerated to answer a party purpose and to terrify with ideal dangers. No, I believe these weaknesses to be real and pregnant with destruction.
All right, Chad. History, Hamilton.
I feel bad, Corey, because I quote this myself in my everyday life.
Yeah.
It is history.
It's history. You knew it. You quote it all the time. That's why you know who it is, Chad. Who is it?
Who isn't it? It would be shorter
It's
to
really-
tell.
Yeah,
Realistic,
they are
really, guys,
so
you know.
often trifling with the weakness of our country.
Yeah.
That's our boy Alexander Hamilton himself.
Oh,
At-
there you go.
At the Constitutional
That's a
Convention.
trick question, guys.
Yeah, it is.
It
It
was
is.
Hamilton or
it's
Hamilton.
both history and Hamilton. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Core, the next question's yours. History or Hamilton? Take it away, Brant.
Thomas, we are engaged in a battle for our nation's very soul. Can you get us out of the mess we're in? Hamilton's new financial plan is nothing less than government control. I've been fighting for the South alone.
Core, what do you think?
Well, I'm hoping it's Hamilton.
He's hoping it's Hamilton, and he is correct.
Wow.
It is Hamilton. Chad, you got one more left in this category. That's it, buddy. You got a perfect game on the line with a chance to go to the final round with a perfect game. Your last history or Hamilton starts right now.
Corruption is such an old song that we can sing along in harmony. Nowhere is it stronger than in Albany. This colony's economy is increasingly stalling. And honestly, that's why public service seems to be calling me, I practice the law.
I practice the law. Chad, what do you think?
I think I could listen to Brand say these quotes all day.
Yeah.
I also think it's Hamilton.
You think it's Hamilton. Chad, Wilmington, North Carolina, a perfect game.
Wow.
A perfect game.
Wow.
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Core, you fought valiantly. Unfortunately, you came up a bit short. You ran into a bit of a Founding Fathers buzzsaw in Chad
That's
from
tough,
Wilmington,
Corey.
North Carolina.
I feel like he sandbagged me a little there. He told me he was a surfer, not a...
I know.
Yeah, that seems like Chad. It seems like something Chad would say.
This is Who What When. I'm Brandon Gray here with my friend Daniel Thompson. And what an exciting second round it's been. The Founding Fathers episode of the show has been bonkers.
Been crushing it, Bran. Our contestant Chad from North Carolina has continued his perfect game to come out on top. We'll see if he can take it all the way and secure a Who What When fanny pack in our final round all about Benjamin Franklin.
That's coming up. But first, we'll speak with a Clemson historian about the men and women who helped found the United States. That's right after this break here on Who What When. Welcome back to Who What When, an hour of history, games, and trivia from South Carolina Public Radio. I'm Brandon Gray.
And I'm Daniel Thompson. We're covering the Founding Fathers this week with quizzes about the early days of the United States.
That's right. We're having a lot of fun. I think we're having a lot of fun.
I think we always do.
And we're going to get back to those games in just a few minutes. But first, it's time for our occasional educator spotlight. We always love this. Every so often, we like to invite experts from the world of academia to provide more insight into the topics that we're discussing on the show. I don't know if you know this, we're a little goofy sometimes.
What?
So we like to bring in some people that will maybe level us out a little bit, and that is exactly what we're going to do today. We are joined by Dr. Lee Wilson, who's the Associate Professor of History at Clemson University, who specializes in early America, which is perfect for today. Lee, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. Lee, early in the program, I said that there's some debate over who the founding fathers of our country actually are, who's included in that list. People think of, Hamilton the musical or Jefferson and Adams and Ben Franklin. There doesn't seem to be that quite historical consensus of who should be included in that group. From your perspective as a professional, who was the founding group of our country?
Oh, this is really the $1,000,000 question.
It's the hard-hitting
in early
stuff
American
here on
history,
Out of
right?
the gate. That's right.
Starting with a really easy one. Well, this is historiographically, we used to just think of the founding fathers as this really small, tight-knit generation of mostly white men who came together, threw off the yoke of British oppression, and then eventually framed the Constitution of the United States. So you have your big figures like Washington, Hamilton, Adams, Jefferson. More recently, though, and as a professional, when I teach this material, I always try to emphasize that this is a more amorphous group of individuals, some of whom we've only started learning more about. Of course, the sort of traditional founding figures are very important to study. But there also is sort of a group of women, of enslaved and free African Americans, Native Americans that are being refolded into our history of the founding generation. A couple of names that your listeners might be interested in are the African American poet Phyllis Wheatley, for example, whose work was praised by George Washington. Martha Washington, Martha Washington's enslaved laborer, Ona Judge, who's been the subject of a recent scholarly biography, Katie Green, Nathaniel Green's wife. So these are interesting characters that I think that we should refold into our narrative about the American Revolution and the founding period.
When I think of the Founding Fathers, I kind of have this image of me and my bros just hanging out, drinking a beer, having fun, yucking it up, loving each other. But in reality, their relationships oftentimes were a little bit more complicated. Some of them hated each other. Can you tell us more about those relationships that some of them had that maybe aren't as lovely as, the relationship between me and my buddy Dan here?
Well, and this is one of the most, I think, fun things to study about this period is I like to think of it as almost the cast of the Real Housewives of early America.
Yeah.
There are a lot of frenemies, love-hate relationships. Some of them are sort of the ones that we know about. Think about Alexander Hamilton and John Adams. Most of your listeners probably know this from the Broadway musical. Jefferson and George Washington also had some pretty serious beef that resulted in Washington, to a certain extent, rage quitting after his second term, right? He's really deeply hurt by the way that Jefferson has criticized him in the press. That's another thing that we should mention. This is a pretty savage media environment, especially as we get into the 1790s. And a lot of this dirty laundry is aired out in public, which does much good for fostering amicable relationships among these founders.
You mentioned Hamilton. I mentioned Hamilton. So this is now the third mention of Hamilton so far in this interview.
We don't want to throw away any of our shots here, okay?
You got it. You now teach college kids. What is your take on Hamilton hysteria is kind of behind us, but it is given a different framing of that era of history and of some of our founding fathers. What do you think of it and of the knowledge that kids now bring? I mean, when I taught high school history, they literally changed the AP US history test because of Hamilton. So what do you think when college kids come to your class, how has that changed how you teach maybe, or what kids know or think they know about the founding of our country?
This is a really great question. And I think that Hamilton the musical has gotten a lot of criticism, rightfully, from scholars, especially after the Black Lives Movement, for its depiction of Hamilton as an abolitionist, when there's pretty clear evidence that he wasn't one. Abolitionism, as we think about it, really wasn't a thing at that moment, except for particular radical groups like Quakers. Nonetheless, I have nothing but love for the musical in what it has done for my students. They come to my class eager to ask questions, to compare the musical to the historical record. And at least from my perspective, the musical does get a lot of things right, and it opens up these great opportunities for discussion, not just about Hamilton himself and the founding generation, but also about sort of the ancillary cast of characters, the women in the show, and the people who are left out of the show. And there's movement for us to discuss whether that should have been done or not, or could have been done better, right? It provides an opportunity, I think, to ask and answer really important questions about early American history and about your first question: who should be included in our study of early American history?
Which of the, now you brought it back up, which of those lesser known figures do you think deserves their own musical or deserves to be studied more, put in the spotlight a little bit more?
I have a soft spot for James Madison as a historical character. He kind of gets short shrift in the show. I mean, he's obviously there, but he's depicted as this sort of curmudgeonly, serious, unfunny person. And I think the historical record doesn't bear that out. He's this great barometer, I think, for the changing state of politics in early America. He goes from an ardent supporter, the father of the Constitution, to someone who then shifts what we'd say very right and becomes an avid Jeffersonian due to the politics of the 1790s. I think that would be a really fun historical arc to trace. I also would love to see a musical about Eliza, right? At the end of the show, we're left with Eliza. And for real Hamilton nerds, right, there is a discussion that this show is really actually about Eliza. And I pick her because not just because she's a woman, but also because I think she, like Madison, charts a really interesting historical narrative. And for me, that's one about the role of women in the revolution and their eclipsing opportunities thereafter, but also the rise of abolitionism. Like in the person of Eliza, like that's something that we can actually trace and study. Again, I eagerly await these Broadway musicals.
Same, Dr. Wilson, same. You mentioned the lesser known or thought of founding fathers, women, people of color, starting these early movements that we see these reform movements more in the antebellum period. We see them, abolitionism lead to the Civil War. Characters like the ones in Hamilton, but also like John Adams' wife. What's her name? Abigail Adams. Oh my God.
Abigail.
So Abigail Adams writes her husband a letter. Remember the ladies. Like, remember, we have a chance to set up a new democracy. We have a chance to not be a monarchy. We have a chance to do this differently. And a lot of the early aims at instituting anything different than a white patriarchal structure are left wanting. The fight is there. The results are yet to come. I kind of know the answer up front, but why do you think this took so long in our country to get there? And why are we just now reframing what it means to be a founding member of our country?
This is a really tough question as well. And I think it has everything to do with the fact that early America, and indeed America through most of the 20th century, has really been based around the idea of hierarchies in terms of gender and class and race, and that these are really deeply embedded structures. And I should say not just in America, right, but in sort of Western civilization in existence for thousands of years. And it takes a long time to undo those particular hierarchies, to pull at these threads. And one of the most interesting things about studying this period for me is you can see people like Abigail Adams start to tug at those threads. You can see Phyllis Wheatley tug at those threads. And even though it's unfinished work, right, there's still threads that need to be tugged. When we look at it in a long-term view, you can see things in motion. It's slower than we want, right? It's not producing the results that we want. Nonetheless, I think that we can see movement starting to happen in this period, which makes it so revolutionary, right? This is why we study this period of the American Revolution, or the age of revolutions.
I have one more question, which is a little bit of a tricky one, but I feel like you hear a lot in the political landscape that's what the founding fathers would have wanted. Let's look back at the founding fathers.
Love this.
As somebody who has spent a lot of time studying the lives and the words of the founding fathers, what do you think when you hear stuff like that? Like when you hear people talking about let's this is what the founding fathers would have wanted. What goes through your mind as you hear those type of words stated by people?
I think fundamentally the first thing I think is it's a completely understandable impulse, right? We're a country that can trace its founding to a particular moment, or at least couple of decades. That's unusual in world history, or at least by the 18th century, it was unusual. So I don't think it's strange, right, for people to want to seek an answer to present day questions in the words of the founders. So that's sort of the first part of the answer. I think the second part of the answer is that it is fundamentally, to a certain extent, an ahistorical question, right? It assumes that we can get at one single answer to what did the founding fathers think, or what did they want? What was their vision? Studying this period, I think, and this is another great thing I think that Hamilton the musical does, is it shows you that all of these individuals had very different visions for the trajectory of American society. They all had different understandings of what America meant. And those understandings changed over time. So it's they didn't even understand at this moment what a constitution was, what it meant to be an American, what it meant to found a republic. So I think it opens up all sorts of questions about the complicated narrative of our founding moment. And that's not to suggest that we shouldn't keep looking for these answers, but I think the answer is always going to be very complicated.
Fair enough. And I'd love to leave on that very academic question, but instead, I want to know which founding father was the biggest diva. If you said that they was like Real Housewives, who was the biggest diva? Which one of them was the biggest mean girl? Which one?
Oh, gosh. Thomas Jefferson, hands down.
No
hands
question.
down. No, Hamilton more overtly diva-ish in terms of his putting on style, his fashion sense, his flash. But I think Jefferson, in terms of his behind-the-scenes machinations, writing negative stories about his political enemies, hiring editors to write negative stories about his political enemies. If you needed someone to put something snarky in the press, Jefferson is your guy.
Fantastic. That especially was so helpful, but all of it was so insightful. Dr. Lee Wilson is an associate professor of history at Clemson University. Lee, thank you so much for joining us to discuss the Founding Fathers this week.
Thanks, guys. I enjoyed it.
This is Who What When. I'm Daniel Thompson here with my good buddy and co-host Brandon Gray. Thanks for joining us for this episode all about the founding of our country.
Yeah, and before we get back to our final game today, we want to remind you that you can take part in a future episode of this program. All you got to do is call or text us, 803-470-6347, or you can email us, whowhatwhen@scpublicradio.org.
Our contestant Chad from Wilmington, North Carolina made it through our first two rounds today, becoming the Who What When Champion of the Week. He now has a shot at that sweet, sweet grand prize, the Who What When Fanny Pack.
Oh, it's exciting. Chad, what are you going to do with that fanny pack? What are you going to put in that thing?
I'm going to, I think, put a radio so I can play this show loud and hear this episode over and over again, number one, and lip balm. That's about it.
Lip balm and a radio. You can listen to this on your smart speaker. That's the good news, Chad. So we just saved you some space. But carry around that transistor radio. I like that, too.
I like that.
All you need to do to win the fanny pack is make it through our final game today. It's one we play a lot around here. It's called History or His Story, Benjamin Franklin edition.
Yeah, here's how the game's going to work, Chad. Dan has 3 stories about Benjamin Franklin. 2 of them, 100% true stories from history. The other one, 100% made up by my buddy Dan. The best liar I know, it's his story. And after each story, you'll have a chance to talk it through with me. We can ask questions together. We can collaborate. And once we've heard all 3, it'll be time for you to tell us which one is Dan's lie.
Most founding fathers were under 40. In fact, a lot of them were under 30. Ben Franklin was the elder statesman of the bunch, had lived a full life as a British citizen, and he was kind of a very unique dude. A lot of inventions are credited to him, or a lot of scientific discoveries. He was known to have his share of alcohol, to run his mouth a good bit.
Yes.
A weird guy in general.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of fun stories involving Ben Franklin, and I've got 3 of them here for you.
Okay.
Chad, you ready to roll on Ben Franklin?
Oh, I'm ready. Big Ben Franklin fan. I actually went to visit his house in Philadelphia, but he wasn't home. I was disappointed.
Oh, that's disappointing. Did you knock 3 times?
I did.
Twice on the pipe? Okay.
Did you say his name 3 times in the mirror?
Yeah, you got to do that. You got to say Benny Franks, Benny Franks, Benny Franks. And we did it.
We did it.
And he's going to show up, hopefully not before this episode's over.
Yeah.
All right.
He's going to be mad when he sees that I'm wearing his outfit.
Your first story starts right now. So Benjamin Franklin had many jobs in his lifetime, beginning as an apprentice at his brother's newspaper. He became the postmaster general for over 20 years.
Wow.
He was an ambassador to France and to Sweden and president of the state of Pennsylvania. In his spare time, he also was a highly regarded scientist and inventor, things like bifocals, rocking chair, lightning rod, the stove, as well as publisher, editor of many periodicals such as Poor Richard's Almanac. His first publishing job was at 23, where he took over publishing the Pennsylvania Gazette. This featured our nation's first political cartoon, the Join or Die cartoon.
Oh, sounds light.
Yeah, it's the snake cut up into pieces about the French and Indian War. Franklin was also known for his pen names when he would write, desiring to distance himself from the material so that people could better see his point. Most of the time he did this for political effect, but occasionally he did it just to raise Cain. One example of him just raising Cain is Polly Puritan.
Polly Puritan.
Letters from Polly began appearing in the Pennsylvania Gazette in 1741 before the nation was even a nation. Pennsylvania was almost a decade into what would now be known as the Great Awakening, a time of spiritual awakening in the colonies. Circuit riders, massive tent revivalists, and much more were designed to bring people back to church. Pennsylvania was known as a more religiously tolerant colony because of the Quakers, and as such had a variety of opinion on the topic of the Great Awakening and religious revivals. Polly's letters addressed some of these issues from the standpoint of a widow in the Puritan church. Polly would poke fun at the more straight-laced nature of the Puritans. Occasionally, Polly would get more serious, talking about the poor treatment of women, including herself, within the Puritan community. Polly would have mostly negative things to say regarding the traveling preachers during the time period, claiming that they were converting empty coffers to full while saving souls if they must. Originally designed as just one letter, the people of Pennsylvania enjoyed Polly's letters, which became a regular staple of the bi-weekly Gazette. Because of Pennsylvania's stance on religion, the Polly letters didn't have much of an empirical effect on the Great Awakening as a whole, but do stand as a testament to Franklin's complicated relationship with religion and government. That's the end of story number 1, Bran. What do you think?
Well, this is a fascinating story.
Polly Puritan.
He's just doing a little Polly bit.
He's always doing bits.
This one seems a little bit more serious. One thing that I'm fascinated in is it talks about how it's supposed to be a one-off, but then the people asked for more. How were people giving feedback to
that is a great question, and it's basically the answer is word of mouth or writing into the Gazette.
Sure.
Those are the two ways to give feedback in the 1700s was get out your parchment and write a letter about how much you quite enjoyed Polly Puritan.
Yeah.
That was an Apple podcast
I love it
review.
so much, I got to get my quill.
Or, what you talked about at the watering holes or the saloons or what have you.
So, like, Ben Franklin's walking around just kind of overhearing the chatter of Polly Puritan and said, I got to keep this going.
Got to keep it rolling. He's also in charge of it, so pretty easy to in charge of it to keep it rolling. Chad, you're a history buff. What do you think about Polly Puritan?
Sounds like a bit of a Bridgerton thing going on there with Polly Puritan.
Yes.
I
love it.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm good on the first one.
All right, here we go. Ready for the second story? It starts right now. After finishing his time at the Second Continental Congress, with war already underway, Benjamin Franklin was sent as part of a commission to Paris, France, to entice the nation into helping the United States in defeating Britain in their quest for independence. This was a big reason why the United States was actually able to win the war against England. It helped strengthen France, and it helped weaken England, and that was a win for France. Along with Ben Franklin, who was the leader of this commission, was Silas Deane, a merchant, and Arthur Lee, a lawyer, and a secretary named Edward Bancroft. The commission did about everything they could to woo the French into helping. They purchased weapons and they commissioned ships from the French army. They regularly ate and drank with French politicians, and they found any way they could to spread the American revolutionary propaganda. France still wasn't sure about helping. A developing problem during the commission's time in France was Ben Franklin's inability to keep a secret, especially while drinking. He would routinely drink each night with French politicians, discuss classified matters out in the open on the regular, and Edward Bancroft, the commission's secretary, was actually, this is where it gets tricky, and this is where you might actually care, Bran, a double agent.
Whoa!
Edward Bancroft, who was on the commission to help the French, was actually spying for the British government on America and specifically trying to undermine their attempts to sway the French in helping America. Ben Franklin had mentored Edward Bancroft before the Revolutionary War and considered him a dear friend. Ed Bancroft began taking notes on all of Franklin's classified documents and comments.
Wow.
He did so with invisible ink, Bran.
Wow.
Used a dead drop to pass info to the British. Edward Bancroft successfully passed on reports of U.S. troop movements and treaty information to the British government through dead drops in invisible ink and drunk Ben Franklin's mouth. Ed Bancroft remained undetected as a British spy until 70 years after his death, when his correspondence was discovered in England. That's the end of story number 2, Brian.
Fascinating. I got to be honest, and I don't really have any basis behind why I think this, but this feels early for invisible ink, and I don't really know what to do with that.
It's like you've never seen National Treasure.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. I just I got questions about this one. Is all.
He's got questions about this one. Chad, what are you thinking?
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's a lot going on with the intrigue, the dead drops. I thought the same thing with invisible ink. That was interesting, although I'm sure they had a way to do that. It's a lot going on there. But to this day, when you hear that someone's a traitor to the country, you say they're a regular.
Ed Bancroft.
Ed Bancroft, exactly. So it's kind of a dead giveaway. So I think I know where we're going with this one.
Yeah.
Got it.
You've heard it once, you've heard it a million times.
Yeah. Here's the thing. We got one more story. I'm going to try to muddy the waters even further for you guys. Are we ready for our third story?
Okay.
Here we go. Story number 3 starts right now. After France eventually does join the Revolutionary War, Ben Franklin became the U.S. ambassador to France from 1779 to 1785. He befriended King Louis XVI and helped orchestrate the treaty between the two sides, promising that the United States would help France if they were in need in exchange for their help during the Revolution. During his time in France, a new craze was sweeping the nation's wealthy called mesmerism. You would love mesmerism.
Yeah.
Right? Developed by a guy named Franz Anton Mesmer, mesmerism was an early form of hypnosis that used animal magnetism.
I'm listening.
Mesmer claimed that there was a fluid that connected all living things, and sometimes it could get trapped in a human body, which is why you could get infections. Mesmer claimed that he had the power to control this animal magnetism.
Okay.
Mesmer would gather the crowds together from France's aristocracy, darken the lights, play soothing music, and then pick out a patient from the crowd, usually female, very creepy. He would stare into her eyes until she freaked out. At these events, people would scream, convulse, which Mesmer claimed was the bad energy leaving their bodies. French people would leave these events claiming they felt fantastic, healed, and changed. Mesmer and his followers would carry magnetized rods and would touch plants and trees, believing they were giving them healing powers. King Louis XVI was skeptical of Mesmer, especially as his wife, Mary Antoinette, began attending these events. Louis commissioned a team of scientists that included Ben Franklin to look into mesmerism. Franklin had an idea. The team of 12 scientists found a 12-year-old boy that was a mesmerist, brought him to Franklin's front yard. They blindfolded him and led him around from tree to tree, asking him which of the trees had been magnetized. By the time the boy reached the 4th tree, he was sweating and shaking and fell to the ground, claiming each tree had been magnetized. Franklin then informed the boy that none of the trees had actually been magnetized. The group published this experiment and their findings in a local paper, debunking Mesmer and mesmerism as a whole. Most believe this to be the first placebo-controlled trial in the history of the world. The first time we did the placebo effect right here by Ben Franklin from his mind. That is the end of story number 3. Bran.
It's just interesting. I wonder, do you know why they decided to go with a 12-year-old boy and not an adult?
I think it was a matter of someone who would brag enough to be a mesmerist, but be brash enough to realize it was nonsense.
Okay.
So this 12-year-old probably just thought he could fool anybody. That'd be my guess anyway, but I don't know.
It's very interesting. I'm fascinated by the story and the idea of groups getting together, people beginning to scream and convulse. Like it's a healing service at our local church.
That's right.
So
you were doing that this episode, but it's really the outfit.
It's so hot and it's itchy,
it's
and so it looks
thing,
like it's very similar, but it's very different.
That's
Chad, well, you got any questions about this story?
First, I was mesmerized during this story. It was fascinating,
Chad.
So detailed that I do not believe that it was made up. It's so outlandish that I do not believe it was made up.
All right.
So I'm deducing what my answers are going to be between these three answers, and I think I know where I'm going.
Okay, so Chad, just to recap, the first story is Ben using a pen named Polly Puritan during the Great Awakening. The second story is Ben after the Second Continental Congress, basically having his best friend be a spy for the British government with invisible ink and dead drops. And the third story is Ben Franklin successfully in France using the first placebo effect to debunk a magician for all intents and purposes. Chad, what are you thinking? Talk me through it.
Okay, so again, the third one is so outlandish as to not even be something that one would make up. Number two, Bancroft is pretty well known, and beware of Bancroft. Dan, you're friends with Brancroft. You know,
Brancroft. Oh, I get what you're saying.
Be very careful. So, you never know. And number one, although Ben Franklin did do a lot of those activities, the name Polly Puritan, I could be wrong, but I do not believe that was a nom de plume or sobriquet that he used, and it just reeked of Bridgerton, which is very popular these days. So I'm saying the fake one.
I got to be honest. I'm right in lockstep with Chad. This is my thought process. You kind of take this thing that is very well known about Ben Franklin, and you just kind of turn it on its head. Give us a Polly Puritan. I'm going with Chad, and I hope that I am going to ship out a fanny pack to Chad this afternoon.
Chad from Wilmington, North Carolina, has been right all episode.
Wow.
He knew immediately that the third story was true.
Yes.
Because of the detail. How crazy is that story? It's crazy and it's true. That's what most believe anyway. That's the best we can do in the 1700s. So he's right about that. Story number one, Polly Puritan. Ben Franklin classically had an interesting relationship with religion. That story is my story.
Yes!
Chad is correct.
Chad, we did it!
His knowledge of history remains unmatched.
How about that?
Chad completes a perfect game. There it is. And he is the proud owner of a sweet, sweet Who What When fanny pack. Chad, this is a thank you speech time. Chad, what do you got?
First of all, like I said, I'm a huge fan of you guys. I've been listening since the 80s.
Right,
I love Showcase Showdown and everything.
Yeah.
So I'm honored just to be on. However, a fanny pack is such utility. Every time I drop something, it goes right to the ground. The fact that now I can be hands-free, have somewhere to put it, and have that kind of usage day to day, I think it's halcyon days from here on out. There are only going to be good times ahead thanks to this fanny pack. I'll wear it with pride, but I'll also wear it with utility. I can't wait to see what the future ahead lies. For me, I'm going to go get shades. My friends, the future is bright. Thank you so much. This has been an honor, truly an honor in my life.
That's Chad.
This is the best day of my life.
That's Chad from Wilmington, North Carolina.
Everyone knows there's before fanny and there's after fanny.
That's right.
And you're about to live in the after fanny, and I think that's really exciting for you, buddy. So
next round of eggs, Bancroft is on me, Chad.
That's right.
Thank you. Good. I can't wait.
That brings us to the end of this Founding Fathers edition of Who What When. Thanks again to our callers, Chad and Corey, for playing with us this week, and a huge congratulations to Chad for playing a perfect game and taking home that title, Who What When Champion of the Week. It feels good to say it.
Sure does. Our producer is A.T. Shire. Our executive producer is Sean Birch, whose favorite founding father is his father, Dr. Birch. Wait a minute. This show is a production of South Carolina Public Radio and is made possible in part by listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina.
Join us for an episode of Who What When. Just call or text us at 803-470-6347 or send an email to whowhatwhen@scpublicradio.org.
You can find out more about the show at our website, southcarolinapublicradio.org/whowhatwhen.
And you can listen to an extended version of our show in your favorite podcast app or through your smart speaker.
I'm Daniel Thompson.
And I'm Brandon Gray. Join us again next week for more history, games, and trivia right here on Who What When.